My name's Alex Morris. I'm a UKCP accredited and BACP registered psychotherapist and counsellor working with FTCC, and I've got a particular interest in and focus on addiction in my work, and it's addiction that we're here to talk about today. Joining us is Ahmed Atalla, who likewise works in the addiction recovery field. He's a certified master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, timeline therapy, and NLP coaching. He's worked in the field of addiction for over 5 years and has now dedicated his life to help people to overcome hardships and addictions through practical counseling methods. He's a certified counselor in addiction therapy and a firm believer in the effectiveness and applicability of dialectical behavioral therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, 12-step recovery, and trauma therapy, all in the field of addiction recovery. As well as addiction therapy, Ahmed also treats clients dealing with other mental health issues. He makes it a goal of his to get to know each of his clients with the utmost care so he can guide them to a place of healing and freedom from the pain of one's past. This comes from having embraced freedom, peace, and overcoming addiction in his own life. Ahmed believes that his journey towards recovery can act as a valuable source and benefit to clients. And he's driven by integrity and a passion for helping people. Welcome, Ahmed, and thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you very much, Alex. Pleasure to be here.
Good stuff. It's a pleasure to have you. I've got a few questions I'd like to ask, but we'll just knock things around and see how we go. Okay. So, I mean, I've already mentioned a little bit. Perhaps you could tell us a bit more about what inspired you to work with addicts, and what are the most challenging and most rewarding aspects of working with this client group?
What inspired me to work with, I came to Thailand a little over 5 years ago for treatment myself in a drug and alcohol rehab center. And I really didn't have a long goal or vision in sight, or even knowing that recovery or full abstinence from substances is even possible. But the thing I noticed in this place was a lot of recovering addicts working in the facility themselves, people whose stories are, I don't like to compare, but a lot worse than mine, with decades of using drugs and decades as well in recovery, helping people recover. That was the initial thing that I thought, you know what, if they could do it, why can't I? It just sort of happened, like that saying, it's just the way the cookie crumbled. I got clean. My counselor at the time told me, Ahmed, I want you to start studying life coaching, the NLP course that I did. Actually, both of us did it together in Bangkok. And when I started working in the field, the work can be intensely satisfying or deeply frustrating, depending, of course, on the state of mind I am at the time. I love working with addicts. I love helping them. There's nothing more satisfying than seeing the light grow in them, them getting it. But at the same time, there's many that don't, and it's a very challenging job.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you're, as you said, you kind of take a lot of joy from seeing people get well.
Absolutely.
But you have to deal with it when people don't get well. And
yes,
that's very hard. Particularly, I guess what I'm thinking about is your sense of what really makes the difference for somebody.
Yeah.
What do you think it is that really is fundamental, as you say, to kind of turning that light on for somebody?
It varies from person to person. There's, for me, for example, it took me 12 different rehabs, 8 different rehabs, 12 different times, and I don't believe I'm cured from this disease or that I've got this. I've got You know, there's a saying in the big book, you know, we are not cured of alcoholism, or, you know, this is from the AA big book, but what we have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition, which is something I need to do on a daily basis. You know, when did it click for me, or when was the shifting point? I don't know. You know, I really can't pinpoint. I had enough, you know, enough was enough. And there's some people that come and get it and they relapse, and there's people that come, and there's some of the most difficult clients I've worked with that I don't, you know, I don't like saying they don't have a chance, but warning signs and red flags during their time in treatment, and they end up doing really well. It's
bit of a mystery, in other words.
it is a mystery. It is definitely a mystery. That's a good way to put it, Alex.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you know, you've touched upon the spiritual aspect, which obviously 12-step puts at the core of recovery, and it sounds from what you were saying that's been really important to you personally as well.
It has been. Now, I was introduced to 12 steps here, and it's a program that's definitely helped me a lot. You know, it's the thing I get most from it is the support group, the connection, the not feeling alone outside of being in primary, sitting, or even in a sober house. You know, I tend to isolate. You know, I tend to stick to my own. Addicts in general tend to do that. And this is a place people get together to help each other stay clean.
Yeah.
And it's a program that's worked for so many people.
And I think certainly in my experience, you already touched on something very important there, which is, you know, essentially the addict or an active addict finds themselves in a bit of an impossible situation where there's a deep craving to kind of belong and connect without even being able to quite state that that's what's happening. And yet at the same time, a real fear of what that means.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely, 110%.
Yeah, like it's...
And I found that connection in NA. And I found people... I remember going to my first meeting, and someone picked up a 9-month key tag. I was still in primary. I was still in rehab at the time, you know, 1 or 2 months clean. And I went to my first meeting outside of the rehab. And I didn't believe it. I genuinely didn't believe that that anyone could abstain from drugs or substances completely. You know, I thought, and if they did, then they didn't use the way I used. Mm. That concept of abstinence was very strange to me. So having that connection and getting to know these people, and me getting, you know, 1 month, 2 months, you know, day after day, minute after minute, sometimes, you know, in early recovery. I found it is possible, but only by the people who showed me the way and carried the message of experience, strength, and hope from their journey. And that's what I try my level best to do today to the clients that come in to the treatment center.
Mm. There's an aspect there in what you're saying. Obviously, you know, group therapy is integral, particularly the rehab setting for addiction recovery. And I primarily, in my work now, I work with individuals, and you know, I have a question over you know, the importance of getting into a group, being part of a group, and again, obviously that's fundamental in 12-step. What's your view on that? In other words, the idea that someone, I think I'm almost going to put words in your mouth here, but the idea that someone can recover alone.
So your question is, why is group therapy
what makes it so important? Yeah, exactly.
It helps, you know, the individual like develop communication skills and socialization skills, and it allows the clients to express their issues and accept criticism from others. That's what group therapy is in my experience about. There's only so much, being in a primary facility, there is the one-to-one therapy with your counselor, but there's also the group sessions, which I learned a lot from. I learned a lot from taking feedback from someone either I respect and like, or the opposite, someone I don't really get along with, and I had to sit there in a secure and safe environment and take on feedback and give feedback in a healthy manner. Because before coming into treatment, even my communication skills were very, very minimal. I had to learn all this stuff while getting clean. I was either quiet or I'd explode. So these are all things I learned, especially in a group setting, and that's why I found it very, very beneficial.
Yeah. So there's almost like learning a new way of being, isn't it? Almost like learning a new way to live.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which evokes one more question for me on in this particular region, which is I often hear from people who are struggling that being sober will be boring. What's your view on that?
Being sober is I couldn't visualize my life without the use of drugs and alcohol, and I thought that as well. What is my life going to look like without it? And it's going to be boring, and it's going to be. The reality is, using was boring. And for myself, or any of the people I know really who came into treatment or recovery, the fun stopped a long, long time ago. But the thing is, for me, it's my comfort zone. Anything out of even though it was very destructive and a lot of consequences, and the using didn't become fun, it's all I knew. I didn't know any other way. And it took me a while to adjust. I remember being in a sober house, and I found all the guys connecting and laughing and joking and getting along with each other, but it was almost like it felt unnatural for me to do that. I always, after the group session, which was compulsory, I'd go off to my room and just, watch Netflix or something. And it took me a bit longer than the average person to be able to connect on a deeper level with humans, with anyone. Today, there's a saying, recovery, you'll live a life beyond your wildest dreams. And I'm really living that today when I look at my life. It's fun. I have a job. I'm living in Thailand, working and helping people struggling with addiction. These are all gifts of recovery. This is all gifts of being clean. I started a course, a photography course, which is something, I go to the gym. I'm athletic. My relationship with my family and friends, I built a network of good people in my life. These are all things I didn't have in my addiction or when I was using.
Yeah, I love the sound of that. A fulfilling life.
Absolutely, fulfilling, a rewarding and fulfilling life. The things I do today, and it's simple. I live a simple life, but I'm just content. I'm okay, and when I'm not okay, I'm okay not being okay. There isn't that. I wish people could just give it a chance. There's so much the world has to offer than the getting and using and finding ways and means to get more drugs, which is my life and active addiction.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an extremely narrow focus, isn't it? As if that's the only possibility for me.
Yeah.
And nothing else exists beyond it.
Nothing else exists. I'm a shell of a human being whose one sole mission is to get high on a daily basis. And it's sad. You know,
Yeah.
and it was very sad.
Yeah.
And getting into recovery isn't easy. You know, it's easy to put down the drugs, but it's not easy to stay stopped, you know, and that's when I had to really put in the work and go to meetings when I didn't want to go to meetings and do the work at the meetings, you know, get a sponsor, work the steps, get a service position, stay connected with people. Slowly but surely, things started to fall into place. You know, I didn't, like I said, I didn't plan to be in Thailand for over 5 years. It just sort of happened, you know, and that's a gift of recovery. That's a gift of being clean. If I was using, I probably wouldn't be here today. I definitely wouldn't be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, I mean, obviously, again, in 12 step, a lot's made of powerlessness, but actually, step 3 is about making a decision.
Yeah,
And, it's easy. I'm sure you've heard this countless times. I'm sure, given what you've said, I would have expected you've said it yourself countless times. When I'm in a place of pain, I will say that, I'll stop. I'm never doing this again.
yeah,
But that's not a decision. And the kind of decision you're describing, that underpins the willingness to do all the things you've talked about to really change my life, is to try to answer the question, how do I actually want to live? Who do I want to be?
yeah,
Um, and that, like you've said, to move away from the only thing you've known that's ever really, despite it being harmful, that's ever really kind of helped, made you to feel better. It
yeah.
takes real courage, I think, to make that
Absolutely,
leap.
absolutely. Uh, I'll just say a quick thing. You know, I was 6 months clean, and I got into a good routine, and I was getting up early and going to the gym, and then attending the group. And on the day of my 6 months clean, um, I remember I woke up at about 3 p.m. And I couldn't get out of bed. I had overwhelming anxiety and fear, and I just couldn't pinpoint what it was. And I'm like, that's strange, you know. I'm usually up by 6 in the morning, you know, and 3 p.m. I'm still in bed, and I'm like, Ahmed, come on, get up, go to the coffee shop, you know, do your thing. I get up, I go to the coffee shop, and I just break down in tears. I don't know why. I go back to the sober house. It was on a Sunday, and we have the on-site meeting in the sober house. I get up, I pick up my key tag, my 6 months key tag. I don't say a word during the meeting. Go to my room, go to sleep, and that was it. The day finished, and I looked back, and I was like, that was a very, very strange day. So I was speaking with a friend of mine, and he gave me this analogy that I really like. And he's like, it's like you're a little kid in the ocean, and you're swimming, and you look back at the shore, and all of a sudden you realize how far you've come, how far out in the water you are, and you panic, and the kid starts, you know, he's in so much fear. And that's what it kind of was, you know. It was everything was fine, you know, everything was good. And just on that day of the 6 months, you know, it kind of hit me. Yeah, I'm 6 months clean, but I'm 6 months further away than what I know.
Yeah.
You know, it's all unknown territory that addicts get into, this recovery thing. It's all new. It's all new. Going for a meal with people outside after the meeting is new. That was overwhelming to start off with, because I didn't do it for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything's new and therefore unknown and
Yeah,
frightening.
frightening. Yes.
Yeah. And I think, again, in my experience, that's why something like 12 step can be so important, because, you it's an imperfect organization because it's populated by imperfect people, as with everything. But
Yeah,
actually, if you're lucky enough to meet, um, you know, the right people who can be there for you, they can hold you through these new experiences. And, the fellowship offers things like commitments so that you can start to build confidence in yourself and in a new way of life. Um,
absolutely.
and I think that's absolutely vital, the kind of thing you're describing,
Yeah,
because it's so scary.
yeah.
Um, what will life look like if I stop doing what I've always done?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to, I mean, obviously at the moment we're in lockdown. What kind of challenges do you think that's going to be presenting recovering addicts in particular, and what do you think is going to keep them going at this point?
You know, it's I have a couple of personal friends with double digits, like over a decade clean, who've relapsed because of COVID. It's a frightening thing, and for me, let me talk about my experience with this. I really struggled the first week. I was completely in the fear zone. My routine was taken away from me. My job said, right, we don't want you 5 days anymore. We only want you 2 days. So I was left with a lot of time on my hands. And then the city was pretty much on lockdown. The gyms closed, the malls closed. You weren't allowed to go to restaurants, only delivery. Nothing was open, and I was spending a lot of time in my head. And this was all new. This was all happening within 72 hours. All of what I just said happened. So I was staying, on top of the news, constantly looking and refreshing my page and seeing what, the news in Chiang Mai is happening, and in Thailand, and the flight restrictions and the curfew implemented, and all this stuff started to really take me down, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, even physically. And I was like, right, I can sit and complain about this. I can just be negative. I can get mad. It's another thing I'm powerless over. I'm completely powerless over this. So what could I do? What could I do in this situation to change? I can identify what's going on. What's going on with me that's making me feel this particular way. Become aware of the situation, and how can I act accordingly? Adjust. I need to be able to adapt in situations that occur. And this was a test for me. It's a test for a lot of people. I didn't like and addicts especially, when you take the routine, something and that's what I always say, don't put all your eggs into one basket. A lot of addicts, including myself, I'll focus too much on one thing, and then when that one thing is taken away from me, it feels like the end of the world. But really, it's not. I evaluate what's going on before I start acting impulsively towards it. And just recognize that, this is how it is at the moment, and what can I do about it? I got involved in volunteer work to kill some of my time. To give back as well. I started the photography course. That's something I started. I started learning another certificate, holistic health practitioner course. These are all things I wouldn't have done if this pandemic hasn't started, and as scary as it may be, I just have to maintain and have faith that everything is going to be okay. And I know it's going to be okay. Within something I liked about NA or meetings in general is within 24 hours of that happening, I could attend any Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous meeting worldwide. I attended some in the States. I attended some in Europe. I attended in England. I can log in anywhere in the world through Zoom. Alex?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just thinking about it because, that global community that you just described as opening up, you have a place where you can just immediately belong, right? And
Yeah.
And find your footing again. I feel like, at least almost felt to me like two aspects of what you were describing. One was the initial kind of almost shock as the ground shifts and I'm just not sure what's going on and I can't do the things that give me the structure that I feel is so important. And then out of that almost came like a rebalancing where you're like, right, okay, this is how things are. I'm not going to do what I would have done in the past, which is to retreat and close down and all of those things. Even though it's scary, actually, I can be open to this. And
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, you know, I look at it as a healing, growth. You know, how can I be of help? You know, instead of making about me, how could I be of service to others who are going through the same thing? You know, who's everyone's life are being affected. You know, how can I make my talents or my skills available to those who need them? You know, I go around Chiang Mai. There's so many people queuing up for like little plastic bags of soup, vegetable soup and rice. You know, how can I be of service? How can I volunteer? How can I give back? And to anyone, you know, how can I put my skill set, counseling and life coaching, and help others who need it? Uh,
yeah,
there's
absolutely.
so much, you know, I have to remind myself and be thankful and appreciate uh, what I have,
Yeah,
and adapting to the circumstances is it's probably one of the most top things, you know, just being flexible, you know, just
yeah. I feel
not,
like
yeah.
I was just going to say I feel like you've responded to it rather than reacted to it. You know.
Yes, yes, yes. In the first week though, I was reacting to it.
Yeah.
No, and if I had continued down that path, it would have probably taken me out as well. Unfortunately, it has taken people out. And it's terrifying. It's a terrifying time. Uh, you know, personally, I don't like being in my head, though, you know, quarantine and being on my own and not being able to connect with people and having that structure and routine taken away. And it's difficult. It's definitely difficult, but there's so many other things I could do and have done once I stopped reacting to it.
Yeah, and I feel like part of that, you know, the part of that reaction is about like a reversion to, if you like, old coping strategies, which include kind of ways of thinking and feeling about, you know, about what's happening to me. And you know, I think what you're describing is, you know, you've nurtured something else within you that you've been able to call upon to move away from those old ways of thinking that perhaps other people haven't been able to do. You know, they've fallen back into, if you
Old
like,
patterns,
their old life. You know,
life,
um,
absolutely, absolutely.
you know, which I think is to be understood compassionately in the sense of it's trying to survive. It's just, you know, I do tend to see a lot of addictive processes. I don't really like generalizing too much, but I think a lot of it is an attempt to survive. It's just gone pretty wayward and has now become much more harmful.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, you know, I love listening to what you're saying around how a real commitment to recovery and you know, a commitment to yourself. You know, who do I want to be? I want to be someone who embraces the world. I want to be someone who reaches out. I want to be someone who helps. And
Yeah.
you know, that will help me to overcome fear and uncertainty and all of those things. Um, yeah, I just wanted to mention a part of the reason, obviously, why we're talking is you wrote a workbook on addiction, didn't you? And I just wondered, um, wondered what was behind writing that workbook, and what you feel makes it different, or how it contributes to someone in recovery.
I've been to many treatment centers, and all of them use more or less CBT, DBT, relapse prevention, recovery planning, and the facility I'm in has two groups: mental health and addiction clients, where I wanted to make sort of a, it's kind of like there was this saying, was it the chicken or the egg? I struggle with both, or had both mental health and addiction issues, and what started first? Was it my addiction that took me out, and I became depressed and full of anxiety, or was it the other way around? And to me, it doesn't really matter, and I find there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
And vice versa. There's a lot of the same, I wouldn't say methods, but almost the same ways to heal from addiction and mental health. It's about connecting with others. It's about getting a healthy routine. So I wanted to create something that fits for both tracks, both the mental health and addiction.
Right. And I agree with that way of thinking. I'm thinking about, you can think about certain OCD type behaviors, or you can think about certain patterns of thinking that underpin a lot of kind of anxiety. They are, in a sense, addicted processes, where I become locked in a habitual pattern that I kind of experience as being, on the one hand, helpful, but also limiting and harmful. And, so there is a lot of, I agree, a lot of overlap. And in my experience as well, I need to treat that, if you like, both in the present in terms of habits and behaviors and structure, and then also to think about the past and what has kind of given birth to those ways of coping with the world.
Yeah.
Again, I would say that need for connection, trust, intimacy, and to be really understood and attended to is practically ubiquitous. It's just, it's who we are, And to circle back then, in that case, I wondered, I think you've already touched on this a bit, in lockdown, all right, 12-step meetings are still available for people. What other things do you think that people need to be doing? I mean, you've mentioned, people who've been a long time around and have relapsed. What do you think is key at this point in time to care for people to care for themselves?
Stay connected. Whatever your routine today looks like, make sure you stick to it. For me, these are the two, or the things that help me the most, is connection, whether unfortunately today, or a lot of it is through online, but it's reaching out, staying connected, getting involved. It's very easy to isolate when I don't have to see someone. I can switch off my phone. I can disappear when I want to disappear. But that's my disease taking me out. My disease wants me alone. And the more I do that, the harder it will be for me to open up again and connect with the people I've been avoiding for the last few weeks, couple of months. But it's not too late. It's not hard. It's not
I think
routine and connection, Alex. I can't stress the importance of both of those.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you, and I think you know, keeping a check on some of those, let's say, kind of limiting or punitive ways of thinking about things. I think you gave a really good example there. You know, the idea that I've not called that person for a week. It's too late to call them now. You know, they won't be interested in hearing from me. You know, that kind of thinking that can really attack the person and keep them stuck and keep them on their own.
Absolutely.
You know, again, I do believe that things like that generally, when they started off earlier in someone's life, were protective. You know, maybe people weren't safe to be near to, maybe people couldn't be trusted. But over time, you know, those ways of thinking can become prisons. And I think recovery is about opening up the world and you know, to think back to that idea of spirituality, to keep that sense of faith, you know, that things can be okay, and I will be all right.
100%. You know, that you know, in the program, that conscious contact with a higher power, however that may be for anyone. And I know a lot of people struggle with the concept of God, and that's a whole nother topic on its own. But you know, it's having that spiritual connection. You know, they stress over and over, it's not a religious, it's a spiritual program. That connection, having faith, knowing everything is going to be okay, and asking for it.
Yeah, reaching out. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for your time for talking with me today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and it's been, yeah, and thank you very much for your openness and speaking about your own experience. I think it's extremely important to kind of give an example of what can happen for someone. You know, you explained that, you know, you've been around for a while trying to get well, and it hadn't happened for whatever reason, and now that it has happened, look how different your life is, and you know, you're a wonderful example for people. Which doesn't mean that everything's all sweetness and light. There are still struggles, but it's living, as they say, life on life's terms, and it's great to hear it.
And it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much. And
you're most welcome, Alex. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.